Defund DOC is a movement and belief. Our mission is to stop oppression, exploitation, and bring about relief. Raise awareness, open eyes to the corruption in our midst. It's a higher way of thinking, but I'm sure you'll get the gist. Corrupt politicians and slimy administrators want to label us rebels and radical demonstrators. We are the ones who aren't scared, the voices that were never there, the ones willing to fight when no one else cared, the ones who stood up and finally said this isn't right, the only ones pushing back against the bureaucratic might. Support us if you can and listen for a few, because ultimately Defund DOC is for you.
While there are several benefits to being in a relationship with an incarcerated individual, it's important to acknowledge the difficulties that come with it. Limited physical contact can be incredibly challenging, especially for someone who appreciates the physical affection. It will require finding alternative ways to express love and affection, such as through letters, phone calls, and limited visitations. It takes creativity and patience to navigate this aspect of the relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I mean, you can't take the good without talking about the bad. And one of the bad is that you're losing that primal way that we show, intimacy with our significant other, which is, consummating and having that intimacy with each other. And so not having that, being deprived by the state of such a, an important function of a relationship is a really terrible thing. And as a prison reform activist, we do believe significant others should be allowed to come into the prisons and be with them for as long as they want to, and then leave and then come back or whatever. There's prisons around the world that do this, but in this country, that's not something that is acceptable. And so we have to deal with that reality currently. We have to deal with the tools that we have, and one of those tools is having like phone sex or writing letters that have erotica in them, or you can get real imaginatory and have a really thriving sex life, even though they're incarcerated. So that is a really, really important function, but yet it's also just a transitory thing. It should not be the, exclusionary fact that keeps you away from being with the inmate is because you can't have sex. That would be superficial, and most people would not admit to saying, I'm not going to be with the inmate because I can't have sex. That's really superficial. But there are people out there that are like that, and so we have to acknowledge that. But back to your topic, I agree with you. There's definitely a super negative in regards to that, Linda.
All right, let's move on to the next difficulty, social stigma. Society often holds stereotypes and judgments about individuals in relationships with inmates. It can be emotionally draining to constantly navigate these prejudices and misconceptions, but your resilience and determination can help overcome these challenges.
Yeah, that was what we already touched on earlier. The bigotry is going to be so profound. I mean, you got to think, our whole society has been propped up by bigots, essentially from the inception. I mean, we started with slavery and then segregation, and now we're talking about prisoners. Prisoners are the lowest class of people in this country, and therefore they're going to be stigmatized. And you got these people on their high horses that are going to judge you for being in a relationship with one or judge me for being in prison. But there's not one of them people that can ever say they haven't made a bad decision. These judgmental hypocrites, they want to get on their high horse and judge you, and most of the time these are just creeps to begin with. They're most likely a lame in the bed, and they don't have any kind of passion like an inmate or a prisoner does. Creativity. I mean, most of the guys in prison can have that innate ability to surprise most people out there, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that they're not harnessing the true potential of our American people that are incarcerated. These are people that can create vast tattoo art murals. They can do basically anything if they were just given the education and the tools to do it. So, yeah, the stigma is not justified, and so you're going to have to stand up against it. So, yeah, that was a good one.
The next one is probably something that everybody in this type of relationship has experienced, financial strain. Supporting an inmate financially can be a burden, especially considering the limited income opportunities for those in prison. It's important to plan and budget accordingly, and your resourcefulness and financial management skills will be put to the test.
100%. This is one of the biggest things that we're fighting for at defunddoc.net is the ending of prison slavery. I mean, why are the government getting away with enslaving our sons and our daughters? It just does not make any sense. And you got regular people out there having to be the supporters of these people that are under state care. I mean, there's people in prison that have to be supported by people that are struggling to pay rent or pay their car bills and their own groceries and kids and all these bills, yet the state, the omnipotent power state, is stealing the wages of every prisoner in this country. It has become the biggest kleptocracy in the world and the biggest human slavery scheme in history, and they get away with it. So yeah, you're going to have to be prepared to support your prisoner financially, and that's a tragedy. And that's why we need more activists, people listening to this. Be part of the solution. We're not asking for much. Just be a part of the podcast. Listen to the podcast. Eyeballs are the least that most people can do. Then you could get even more engaged with the activism and furthering the interests of the movement. But yeah, you're right. That is a very important negative there.
Thank you for sharing your insights on that. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we will continue discussing the difficulties that come with this type of relationship. Stay tuned for more on Relationships Unlocked.
Hey everybody, my name is Adrian, and I am very excited to recommend Daniel J. Sims' 3 amazing books. In his book, Hopeless in Seattle, a Foster Kid's Manifesto, he reveals some heartbreaking stuff. For instance, he tells us how he was abandoned by his parents, abused in foster care, turned to running away and living on the street, sleeping in the newspapers, bins, and even stolen cars, and ultimately was institutionalized, sharing deeply painful events like when he was stabbed. It is a compelling read. In his book, The Art of Living, Everything You Need to Achieve Success in Life and Business, I Learned in Prison, breaks down fundamental maxims he's distilled from over 20 years in prison. It is a profound book. And of course, his book, Defund DOC, Turning All Prisons into Treatment and Career Centers, is a remarkably concise and comprehensive book detailing the failure of mass incarceration and providing the solutions to massively reform it and reduce recidivism significantly. Every prison reform-minded person needs this book. Each book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or other booksellers, but special to defunddoc.net. You can get all 3 digital books for this price of one. Check out the special offer today. You will be happy you did. He's a really good person and amazing author. Plus, you will be helping the social justice mission. Get them now. Thank you.
Hello, world. My name is Eric Napick, DOC number 395314, and I am a prisoner. I've experienced firsthand how incredibly horrible it is in prison. There is no meaningful education or treatment. They torture us with solitary confinement. Prison for nonviolent, non-emergent, and petty pretexts. What we in the state system call diesel treatment. It is very mentally traumatizing. Our families and friends' funds are extracted by phone, media, and personal property monopolistic companies that prey on us as captive consumers. Of course, the most tragic atrocity is how they are stealing our labor through slavery due to the morally corrupt 13th Amendment, enacted to create a new slave class after abolishing private slave ownership. Now, every state exploits prisoners' labor through slavery. It is sickening. All this is why we need you to become a certified prison reform activist. You don't have to be an ex-prisoner, felon, or have any experience in the criminal justice system. All that matters is you love the American people. In the special offer section, you can receive a free digital copy of Defund DOC, Turn All Prisons into Treatment and Career Centers, a free certificate as a prison reform activist, free online support, free network opportunities, free activism event opportunities, and free eligibility for prizes, trophies, and a grand prize of $1 million within global accreditation, MG LLC, rules and regulations. We desperately need an army of certified prison reform activists to end this evil and corrupt system. You will be the new Underground Railroad. This is the civil and human rights fight of this generation. Join today. Thank you.
Welcome back to Defund DOC's Relationships Unlocked. Before we took a break, we were discussing the benefits and the difficulties of being in a relationship with an inmate. We're going to move on to emotional turmoil, which is another challenge that many individuals face in relationships with inmates. The roller coaster of emotions is ranging from hope and happiness to frustration and sadness. It can be draining and challenging to navigate. It's important to prioritize self-care and seek support from friends, family, or support groups to help cope with these emotional ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely, Linda. These relationships are really deep. You go to a very deep emotional, mental, even spiritual level when you get into a relationship with a prisoner because you have no distractions. You have to sit there and focus on each other and get to know each other. In this day and age of countless abilities to stream whatever you want or whatnot, this world is not ready for such a deep, profound connection. And sometimes it's scary and it puts you in that turmoil. So, yeah, thank you. That was a good one.
Lack of privacy is another difficulty that arises in relationships with inmates. Conversations and visits may be monitored by prison authorities, limiting your sense of privacy and making it challenging to have an open, intimate conversation. Being mindful that this limitation and finding ways to maintain privacy within the boundaries set by the prison system is crucial.
Yeah, that's a really good one as well. The thing is that prison is so oppressive. I mean, the way that they're micromanaging the American people in these prisons is stunning. I mean, how are you going to justify constant supervision in regards to a husband and a wife, talking to each other or holding hands? Like, do you really need to be in the middle of that, government? Come on. So, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. We need reform, and it's good for us to talk about these things.
Limited quality time is another challenge that individuals in relationships with inmates face. Visits and communications may be restricted, limiting the amount of quality time you can spend together. It's important to make the most of the time you have and find creative ways to connect and strengthen your bonds.
Yeah, that's really good. Me and you have thought about many different ways to do that, and we use books and watching TV shows together. Currently, we're watching season 1 of Once Upon a Time. So, yeah, there's ways to do it. You got to just do it. You got to find it, and it's worth it because you're going to have that unbreakable bond that you've always been searching for. And so, yeah, it's definitely a good thing.
Let's move on to trust issues, which can also be a challenge in relationships with inmates. Especially if there were issues of trust prior to their incarceration. Rebuilding trust and maintaining it can be a complex process that requires open and honest communication, patience, and understanding from both parties.
Yeah, that's correct, too. You're going to always face trust issues, whether it's a relationship with somebody in prison or if it's a relationship with somebody outside the walls in the regular world. Trust is a huge thing, and so you're definitely going to have to focus on ways to build it and keep it strong.
Lastly, after release, the inmate may face difficulties reintegrating into society. This can impact the dynamics of the relationship and require adjustments from both parties. It's essential to provide support, understanding, and patience during this transition period.
Yeah, that's really important because sometimes people don't want to ask for help, and they're going to be struggling with a lot of factors. I mean, I'll speak on it. A lot of guys, they just want to be this tough, project this exterior that they can do whatever. And, the data tells otherwise. 83% of Americans recidivate. And I believe that's largely because of the lack of education, the lack of treatment, the lack of the money to adequately reentry society, but also the lack of support and the lack of having people there. And another large factor would also be the trauma that these guys are suffering when they've been in prison in these state-created artificial environments that are just besotted with violence and guard brutality and prison administration corruption. I mean, when they're trafficking you around the state with diesel treatment or diesel therapy, these things are traumatic, and the state does it as a routine. So, yeah, that's good. That's a good one. As that was the last one, we do want to touch on a couple of things. We wanted to talk about Remember Everybody, July 4th. We're kicking off the project for the TV reality show, Love and Prison Activism. It's going to be an amazing show. You're going to want to be a part of it. You need to subscribe. You need to be part of this community. You have a chance to be a TV star on this show. And at minimum, you can be featured in the protests and whatnot. So, yeah, definitely be there and be a part of this movement.
Being in a relationship with an inmate comes with both benefits and difficulties. The emotional connection, loyalty, personal growth, potential for personal transformation are some of the benefits that can make this type of relationship rewarding. If you're considering or are already in a relationship with an inmate, it's important to approach it with an open mind, patience, and willingness to navigate through the difficulties. Remember, every relationship is unique, and what matters most is the love, understanding, and support that you can bring to each other's lives.
That's great. And remember, we got the 3-book special. This will really help our cause. We're selling all 3 books, Hopeless in Seattle, Foster Kids Manifesto, Defund DOC, and The Art of Living. All 3 digital books for the price of 1 book for $14.99. Scoop this deal up. It's not going to be here forever, so, get on it. Also, we're excited to tell everybody about the merchandise that we have. I'll let Linda speak on what we've already created and where you can find it.
We currently have apparel and merchandise such as T-shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers on Etsy, Teespring, Printify, and our website, defunddoc.net.
Awesome. Thank you. And as everybody knows, all the proceeds of this merchandise is going into this cause to promote it, to gather awareness, to gather support for turning these prisons into treatment and career centers, ending prison slavery. So this is a really big grassroots movement that needs your help. This is not something where you can just sit back on your laurels. We need you. We need you that is listening right now to share it with your friends and your family and say, hey, look, this is our underground railroad. This is our time of history where we have to stand up for the civil rights of our people. So thank you. We want you and we need you to be a part of it. Thank you.
They call it reform, but I call it warfare with the billion-dollar industry where the politicians own the shares. I say defund DOC, and they label me an activist. I just call it how I see it, the facts. So there it is. They give us numbers like we're cattle. The system is a joke. Just follow the paper trail. The proof is in where the money goes. Paid to push papers behind the desk while they judge us. Millions go to prisons and prosecutors and call it justice. Spend that money where it matters on we the people. Get us some help rather than prisons and pensions and plans to put us in a cell.